Oh my goodness. I am so excited to be here today for this pop up event that we just decided to have. This is going to be an incredible informational session. And I am joined today by John Rugarber, and he is the regional safety manager with AIM Transportation Solutions. And I was so incredibly inspired on it was actually last week. I think it was on Friday. He sent me an email. He said, Gina, we need to do this. We need to share with the industry best practices for the upcoming Roadcheck. And you know what? I'm hoping that everyone can take away just a few little minor nuggets today to really help them with the upcoming 2025 Roadcheck. John, thank you so much for volunteering your expertise with the industry today to help move drivers forward. And let's hope we don't have a fire, but I'm excited to have this fireside chat with you. So well, first of all, tell us a fun fact about yourself, something that you would like the industry to know, and how do you help your drivers prepare for the upcoming Roadcheck?
Well, let me start by saying thank you very much, Gina. That was quite an introduction there, and I appreciate it. And I'm really glad, and I want to say thank you from AIM also to allow us to come on to Luma and pass on this information to everyone. Yeah, I've just been with AIM for about give or take 23 years. Began as a driver, worked my way into safety. Now I'm doing some training, and we are using Luma as our training platform, and we love it. I love working with it. It's interactive. We're having great success with it. So I put it out to Gina about bringing this up with Roadcheck 2025, which is going to be coming up. AIM really, we do these webinars, passing on this information so that we can help drivers get prepared for these events. So again, it's kind of the first time. Hopefully, we do it many more times in the future. So I'm going to let Gina lead the way and guide me with questions, but I really just want to pass on any information is good information regarding this. So like Gina mentioned, if you could take even a few nuggets away from it, it sounds like a win-win for both of us.
I love that. John, as a learning scientist, I'm keenly aware of how quickly our mind wanders. And in terms of focusing on the most essential things. And so, if a driver is on the road, we know it's coming up. The road check. When can you tell everyone? When does it start on May 13th? I know it's the 13th through the 15th. Is it like midnight? Like when do they have to start really knowing? Okay, road check is here.
Yes, that's correct. It begins on midnight on the 13th, which is a Tuesday. It would end on midnight the 15th, which is a Thursday. It will be 24 hours a day for those 3 days. So you'll see way stations, scale houses that may normally not be open will be open. You'll probably see an increase in law enforcement personnel on the road so that they can, start to pull over more vehicles and inspect them and get that whole process started.
Okay, how do you alert your drivers, or how do you help them prepare for it? Like, I mean, what do you tell them to know it's coming? So how do they prepare for it? And what do you think is the most essential thing? If they can only remember, a few things, what is the most important essential thing about that road check this year that they need to take away?
Well, really, I think first and foremost, the most important things as a driver that you really need to remember are pre-trip, en route inspections, and post-trips. If you can remember those three inspection processes through the course of the day, you will save yourself a ton of problems because that'll allow you to find issues that are occurring, flat tires, lights are out, uh, any myriad of problems that you could find by doing that. And that's the biggest thing that I could recommend to people is to do a pre-trip inspection. And that even applies to your own personal vehicle. Think about it. You wouldn't want to walk out of your house to go to work and just pull out of the driveway and realize a mile down the road you have a flat tire. So really, I would say pre-trip en route inspections, meaning inspections done through the course of the travel, and then post-trip inspections to get ahead of the curve on repairing things that need to be repaired for the following day's workday.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, John, I know as a learning scientist, you have to, and for it to be in your long term memory, you actually have to have significant amount of exposure, somewhere between 7 plus or minus 2 times, or prior knowledge of these things to be able to recall it on the spot. Do you provide specific checklist, or how do your drivers remember what they need to do for the pre-trip inspection?
Well, doesn't that dovetail nicely into Luma?
Ah,
Because
I didn't even prompt that.
I
Mhm.
know. Well, I have to give you kudos where kudos are deserved. So every week, I'm responsible for sending out Luma assignments based on particular subject matter that we see occurring in our inspection reports and things of that nature. So, interestingly enough, the last month, I've begun to warm up the drivers. Every week for example, the first one was it's coming, and
Mm,
then the following week would be, okay, let's focus on tires, which the focus this year for Roadcheck is going to be tires and out of service violations.
mm,
So one week I would focus on tires, giving them the criteria to look for uh, in case they get stopped. The second week would be hours of service, form and manner, making sure that you dot all your I's and cross all your T's. It's the small things that catch drivers, not
mm.
necessarily the big things all the time. It's dotting the I's and
What
crossing the T's.
what's
So
a
I'm just
small thing? What's an example of like a small thing that you think that drivers kind of gloss over, become complacent on, that come up a lot of times?
well now that the electronic logging devices have begun. A lot of guys forget that they might need to put their shipper and commodity information down below. When you had paper logs, it was easier to remember because it was in your face and you were touching the paper. It was a tangible feel, and you had a
Mhm.
line that needed to be filled in with the shipper and commodity. With the electronic logs, it not isn't necessarily that easy, so they're easy to forget those things.
Mm.
Uh, just date signing it at the end. A lot of guys will finish their day and just go home. They'll forget to sign it in the day. Now, granted, the electronic logs make it a little easier. It kind of reminds you the next day when you come in that you may
Mm.
have forgotten to do something. But it's the small attention to detail that really is where you need to start your focus at.
Mhm.
And then things just begin to build progressively from there if you take care of the small details first.
Yeah, and I would say this, for any drivers listening, this isn't something you do just one time. For you to have it in your long-term memory, think about doing this, thinking about it 9 times, 7 plus or minus 2 times. So if you are always thinking through the steps, think through them in the same order and do it repetitively, time. I mean, that's like only 6 times, John. That's not even 9. So, this idea of hearing it once, you hear it today from us, you're most likely going to forget it, because every hour after you hear it, you lose a certain portion of that information. Your brain just can't handle it. So, keep the checklist, whatever John is providing you, keep it right next to you. If you're not at aim, or your driver, make sure you have all those points. So, what are the key takeaways for tires, John? Like, what are those things for tires, that we should keep in mind for this 2025 road check? You said hours of service and tires.
So tires, and this applies to your personal vehicle too, but on commercial motor vehicles, the minimum tread depth on a front steer tire is 4/32 of an inch. So
Wow.
every driver should have preferably a tread depth indicator, a small little pocket thing that you could put in your pocket if you'd like, to keep
Oh.
an eye on your tread depth. If it's below 4/32, it could be a violation. If it gets below 2/32 on two tread lines, it could be an out of service violation. It's under CSA, the program that everyone should be familiar with at this point, which kind of tracks your violations and assigns points to it. Tire violations are an 8. If you're placed out of service, they add an additional 2 points onto that 8. So now you're looking at 10. And the numbers are relative. You don't want to get too far in the weeds, but that is something to keep in mind is the CSA impact. Another
Mhm.
thing to look for is a minimum of 2 30 seconds on the drive tires of a tractor and the trailer tires. Again, you from a distance, it may be difficult to tell. We get many pictures. Drivers will send us pictures of their tires and say that they're low. And through experience, you could look and say that they aren't. 2 30 seconds is surprisingly low, but it's still technically legal.
Is
So
there a
real,
tool for that, John? Like, how would you know that? A tool? Like, how would you know
yeah,
that? Like, the
the
tool
little
has that? Okay.
the little tread
Mhm,
depth indicator. Most mechanics are very familiar with it.
mhm,
For a long time, we purchased them
mhm,
in bulk and we would hand them out to drivers. We actually, a couple years ago, I had taken a business card, and on the
mhm.
back of the business card, I put a color coded section where they could just drop the business card in the tread line of the tire to give them a general idea. It's not an exact science, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
so that's something that if anybody wants to reach out, I could give them some more information on that. We did do the webinar last night. AIM does provide services to many different companies throughout the country, and that's kind of how Gina and I began this. Was that I had done a webinar last week, and a lot of this information is included in the webinar, uh, in addition to the actual business card and the tire tread depth indicators.
Awesome. I'll put that in the link too, to the webinar where you gave images and specifics about that. Tread depth, I can be honest, in my tires, I haven't looked at that, so I definitely need to do that. That's something I don't know. Tim's probably guilty, who's listening too, of not looking at his tread depth. But it is something very, and it's important, right? Because what happens if the tread depth isn't that? Like, tell us some examples. If you don't check your tread depth, what could happen?
Well, the worst case scenario would be a blowout. Although in the industry, underinflation is really the biggest enemy of a tire.
Mm,
It builds up heat, and then heat destroys the vulcanization of the tire when they manufactured it. So really, underinflation is the biggest obstacle to go here.
mm.
But secondarily, a lot of guys don't carry tire pressure gauges with them. They what's called thump the tire. They'll hit it with a hammer, a mallet, a piece of wood.
Is that a good
Um,
practice? Is hitting
no,
it with
not
a mallet?
necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily. It
Don't
may
do
be.
that, drivers. Don't do
Yeah,
that.
it might be a good practice if you're a guitar player or bass player, but to try to approach that way with the tire doesn't work so well. It,
Yeah.
by the time you can tell the difference, the tire is tremendously low on inflation. Like you should have got ahead of the curve way before you
So you need
heard
those
that
2
difference.
tools. You should
Mm-hmm.
have an air pressure, you should have and a tread depth finder. Those are 2 tools?
Tread, tread depth indicator and a tire
Indicator?
pressure gauge. Those would be
Easy.
the two best tools. Um, look for items, guys, companies who run in garbage disposals or
Yeah.
construction areas. Keep an
Mhm,
eye in between the dual tires, the tires that are side by side. Many
mhm.
times, pieces of wood, large pieces of stone will get stuck in there and cause some major issues. And a lot of this is really it's up to the driver. It just takes the driver to want to inspect, to walk by the
Mm,
truck and look at your tire, feel your tire, rub your hand over the top of it, see if you feel something abnormal. Um, so really, it begins with wanting to do this,
right.
and it's really, but the results can be catastrophic if you don't.
Yeah,
Um, the, the
absolutely.
the front tire blowouts are really the most serious. There's quite a technique to keep hold of a vehicle, an 80,000 pound vehicle going 70 miles an hour, and when the front tire blows out, it takes a little bit of effort to keep it in a straight line. So,
Right. And I think your point is really well taken because I think the majority of time people become complacent because they think it's not going to happen to them. Like, it's not, I've driven for 45 years. I have so much experience. This is never going to happen to me. And it only takes one time. And I know that sounds just so trite, like, well, yeah, but it's not going to happen to me. So you really want to have, the right mindset to want to check your tires and be specific about it. Tread depth, air pressure. John, what else? If they get pulled over from an inspection agent or at a roadside inspection, what else are they going to check besides these couple things that you mentioned? Is that pretty much it, or is there more?
Oh no, there's a ton of things they're going to check on a level one inspection from CVSA. It's going to be a 37-step inspection. If
Wow, for their tires?
well, no, throughout the entire truck.
Oh, okay.
But
I was gonna say their
even though you're
tires.
going to get pulled
Mhm.
over, and the focus is going to be on tires and hours of service, but they
Right.
will a level one inspection will be inclusive of everything. If you see an
Mm.
officer pulling out a little creeper that you can lay
Yeah,
on and roll, if you see him pull
I
that
see.
out, that's
Yeah.
going to be a level one inspection.
Gosh,
You
you
might
guys gotta
you
be
might as well
ready.
settle in. Yeah, you might as well settle in and hopefully
Get
you did your
ready.
pre-trip.
Yeah.
Secondarily, second level two, he'll walk up to the truck. He'll be looking at the truck from the moment he saw you drive by on the road. If a
Jeez.
light was out, uh,
Wow.
oil on the
It's
rims, which
dirty,
could
dirty truck.
right.
I know they'll pull you over. I know Michael's asking, how many inspections does CVSA try to complete? Do they have like, is it like they have a number they're trying? Kind of like people think that police officers have like a quota. Is there like a number they try to complete? Do you know?
No, there isn't a quota, but for that gentleman, Michael, you said that asked the question.
Yeah. Yep.
If you went on to CVSA, just punch up CVSA, Google it. It'll bring
Mhm.
you to their website. It's a nonprofit organization, a very good organization. They have a
Mhm.
ton of information, and I don't. Sometimes on the webinars, I've added the previous stats. On this most recent one, I did not, but it will give you a breakdown of all the inspections that were completed
Wow.
and the different areas that they were completed
Mhm.
in: hours of service,
Yeah, last year was
tires,
brakes. I
brakes.
remember
Yeah,
brakes was last
yeah.
year. Mhm.
Yep. So I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there isn't a quota per se. It's
Yeah, you better
just
be ready, Michael. If you're a driver,
yeah.
all I would say is, be ready. Do the due diligence with your tires, hours of service, and your whole inspection. And there is a checklist. It's the like John's saying that you can study and know what they're looking for. So just expect it to happen to you. Don't it's kind of like, being complacent and not doing it. Just expect you're going to be proud like I'm a winner. I'm going to get inspected and I'm going to shine. I think that's the approach to take, right, John?
Well, it's actually a very good approach to take because really the first impression. What's that saying, Julie or Gina? I'm sorry. The first you want to make a good first impression,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Mhm.
when you pull into a scale house and you have a month's worth of paperwork on your dashboard with some empty coffee cups and some napkins thrown in there and an old McDonald's hamburger,
Uh-oh.
boy, it's not looking good.
It is
If
not looking good.
yeah, if you care so
Mm-mm.
little about that, chances are you don't care about much else. So
Yeah.
really, presentation is a huge part of it. And also, I wanted to mention too is when you get inspected, do not remove your seatbelt. I know it
Oh,
sounds
gosh.
small, but
Yes.
many times our own drivers have sworn that they had their seatbelt on, and yet when the officer walks up, you may have taken it off so that you can gather all your paperwork. You could reach over, open your glove compartment, whatever. When you sit back in the seat and the officer shows up, you don't have your seatbelt on,
Mm.
and he says, "Why weren't you wearing your seatbelt?" And you say, "I was, but I needed to get my paperwork." Wait until the officer sees you with the seatbelt on, then
Absolutely.
remove it and begin the process of getting his stuff. Uh, Another hours of service violation too for the electronic logging devices is make sure your drivers are able to produce the three items that they need to when an officer says, "Show me how to transfer your information to me via USB or email." There's three criteria that the driver needs to show the officer. Now, that could either be in a binder, hard copied in a binder that he could hand to the officer, but it's also usually included in the ELD itself.
Mm.
So show your drivers where that is so that the driver can go to that and respond positively to that officer. You don't want to say no, because if you say, "I don't know," that's a violation. He's going to write
Wow.
you on each one of those violations because you did not know how to transfer the uh, information. You did not know what to do in a malfunction of the electronic logging device. And the third one, I can't remember the third one off the top of my head at this moment, but there's a third. And then to add icing on the cake, make sure the driver has at least 8 days worth of paper logs in his possession. And some of
Mm.
you may say, well, Why does he need that? Because just like I mentioned to Gina this morning, I had a little internet issue. I was able to resolve it. But if your electronic logging device goes down, you need to revert to your paper logs.
Mm.
If you do not have at least 8 blank paper logs available for the officer, that will be a violation also.
Wow.
Again, that kind of goes to those little details. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I love the details. You know, Jeff Green, I appreciate Jeff Green so much. If you don't know Jeff Green, he is a star. He is also safety focused and committed. And I agree with him that it needs to be done all the time, not just during this inspection. And, you know, I think that's so critical to remember that this is why they have this event to show that there are a whole host of drivers out there not doing it. But if, as an industry, we can be committed, the drivers can be committed to doing it all year, then we can increase safety on the road. So I can appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And that
It's
is a good
hard.
point. That is a
Yeah.
good point, Jeff. That yes, I didn't specifically say that it's a daily event because I'm focused on CV the road check. But yes, this is a daily. The things we're talking about today are daily things that should be done every day, multiple times a day. Uh, just because you drop a trailer, your job is dropping and hooking. You need to inspect each trailer, not just the first trailer,
Oh my
and
gosh,
not just
John.
the last.
I have to tell you something. I was driving down the highway in Tampa just a few days ago and I saw a truck. Luckily, it wasn't our client because I would have had to call and tell them, but it was so dirty and somebody had written on the back of the truck, go get them. And I was thinking about the fact how that draws attention to that driver to get pulled over anytime. Like you're putting go get them and you didn't clean your truck. So I mean, I'm sure you tell drivers, like you said, like clean your truck, present yourself in a positive light. Don't leave wrappers everywhere because it does make a difference.
It really does. And you'll never know if it didn't necessarily, but you can't go wrong keeping organization. It just being organized in life in general is a good thing. So if you could pass that on to your professional life and your commercial motor vehicle driving life, you're going to have your better chances of just being a better driver. So, and again, that's one of the things that we do at AIM with all the customers that we have and throughout the country is we try to pass this message on to help them to give this information to their drivers. Even rental customers, when we do rentals and we do the contract carrier services that we do, there are drivers, but we treat the customer with a personal level of interest that we
Mm,
want we want them to succeed because if they succeed, we succeed. Similar to you.
absolutely.
I mean, if you'll succeed as a company if you can get myself to be successful and to, you know what I mean? It all works
Yeah, we
hand in
help
hand.
each other.
Right,
We help
right.
and the drivers, they bring everything to us. Everything in our lives is
Hmm.
dependent on the fleets and on all of you. And I think as a society, we need to thank drivers and thank fleets every day of the year, not just during appreciation, because I know we as Luma and as a society appreciate drivers and appreciate all you do. So let's talk about hours of service because I don't know. To me, I can't drive that long. I get tired and I get off the road, but I know hours of service is a very focal point. Why do you think they're focused on hours of service? And what should the drivers really be concerned about with hours of service, John?
Well, if you go back to the previous year's CVSA report, hours of service was at the top of the list, and I'm going to throw a number out. It's some I think 32, 36, something like that was the percent of out of service violations was
Wow.
hours. So what they do is
Mm,
they take last year's numbers, look and say, where are we having some issues? So that's kind of what prompted the hours of service focus this year, in addition to tires. Uh, but one of the things they're going to look for false reporting,
mm.
which it's a little more difficult with electronic logs versus paper logs. Um, Paper logs had a number of different names associated with them through the years, such as coloring books and different things of
Wow.
that nature.
Mhm.
But it's a little more difficult. But they are going to focus on the use of personal conveyance. and when you can
Mm,
use that, along with adverse driving conditions. So there's the previous regulation put it more on dispatchers and companies to know that a driver was going to run into an adverse condition. They've updated the regulations now and making the driver more involved in the choice of using adverse conditions. So,
mm,
for example, for me to run from Florida to Colorado and be stuck in a blizzard in Denver and still
mm,
push to try to get to Grand Junction on the other side of the mountain, I should know that there was a blizzard coming. There's so much
mm,
technology today, a smartphone, your tablet,
mhm,
you can't get away with saying I didn't know that this was coming. Now,
mhm,
I'm leaving Tampa and I'm running the Florida Turnpike and it seems I'm in Florida now and it seems like there's an accident every day.
mhm,
There's a major accident and it shuts down. Now that's
mm.
not necessarily expected. You
Right.
wouldn't necessarily know that.
Mhm,
I would I recommended on the webinar, I recommended calling your dispatcher or your manager and run through the scenario with him and decide whether or not that's going to be a proper use of adverse conditions. But they will be
mhm.
checking that. Personal conveyance, that's a that's one that companies really should get a handle on because drivers will tend to try to use personal conveyance whenever they can.
Okay.
Uh, you can use it if you're going to go to a hotel. You get a hotel for the night. You can use your tractor to go to a McDonald's, to go see a movie, to
Mm,
go to the gym. That's
mm,
the proper use of personal conveyance.
mhm,
And improper, even being at a warehouse where you get loaded and unloaded, you're out of hours, but they won't let you stay on the facility. You
mhm,
need to leave. You can drive to the nearest reasonable safe location. That does
mhm.
not mean drive 2.5 hours north on 95 from New York City to Vermont to be
Wow.
ready to pick up a load tomorrow morning. Because if you
Okay.
get stopped, the officer's going to say you passed 37 rest areas
Mm,
on your way to Vermont. So this is not a proper use of personal conveyance, and you'll be shut down, and that could cause some issues. So
mhm,
that's going to be what they're looking for, and they'll ask the driver questions. And think about it when you're getting inspected by an inspector that lives probably in the area. He's
mhm,
familiar with the area. He knows how many truck stops, how many rest areas were between Gina's warehouse and John's warehouse.
mhm,
So for you to have passed that first one, trying to further your move for the next day is
mhm.
where they get in trouble.
Why do you think they do that? I've talked to drivers before and they tell me they're stressed out. They say they're stressed
Well,
out. So what do you do? Like if a driver's like, "I'm stressed out, like I needed to go because I needed to pick up that load." Like how do you coach or what do you say to that driver? Because I've had drivers say that to me. That's the why. Like, why are you doing that? You can't do that. They're stressed out.
for every driver, you're
Mhm.
probably going to get that many reasons why they did it. The
Yeah.
biggest one is obviously to get another run to make more
Right.
money
Make more
to.
money.
And if I'm
Mhm.
on PC, it doesn't go against my 14-hour clock or my
Mm.
11-hour drive time. It's
Mhm.
illegal. But if I made it to Vermont and nobody knew any better,
Aw.
I've just now been able to pick up my load in Vermont, headed out to
Yeah.
California, versus doing the proper thing. I may
Mhm.
have only been 20 miles north of New York City before I shut down for the night. So it, with most things in life, it comes down to money. I'm not going to say the stress doesn't play. There's a number of different factors,
Mm.
uh, and it's a difficult position to be in for a company just because you need to stress to drivers that this could be issues. God forbid it there's an accident or a
Right.
fatality.
Absolutely.
And this is where this all comes to a head. And we're all familiar with the nuclear verdicts that are
Mhm.
occurring more and more often. Scopoletti's, I forgot if he had mentioned it on his, but it's a huge issue in the trucking industry. And
Absolutely.
to open up your liability like that is really, really problematic.
I agree. I am so glad you shared this with us today. It has been so valuable to have you on. I love that John and AIM are building a learning community with their drivers. They care so much about this, like a lot of the fleets that work with us that want to share best practices, that want to help each other, that want to build a community around this education so that we can change and save lives and support the fleets. So thank you, John, so much for joining me today. Don't forget, Roadcheck is coming, you all, May 13th through the 15th. Be ready. Reach out to John. John, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Please feel free to reach out. It's J. Rugarber, my last name, Rugarber, at AIMNTLS.com. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions. Gina, I can't thank you enough. This has been a pleasure. I can't wait till we do it again. And thank you, Luma, for being there. Really great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you, AIM Transportation Solutions, and all that you do for the industry. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.